actually brings me into something I want to talk about in the black community, which is health, specifically mental health, and how we discussed before, like, Uncle Johnny's an alcoholic, but we don't talk about him being an alcoholic. This cousin is a pedophile. We don't talk about them being a pedophile. This person is a rapist or a murderer, but we don't talk about it. So, do you? There's a taboo around these topics. What do you what do you think? Like, how do you think we as a people should address these topics? 'Cause I understand that the premise for Black people is that we have to show that we're better than, stronger than, so on and so forth, because the world's going to beat us down. So we have to kind of put these things under the rug, but it's hurting us. So what do you think we need to do about that?
I, I believe just a simple, very simple thing. And I think this is just like a human thing because I think a lot of problems, or mostly all problems, stem from just basic communication. Assuming a response
Uh huh.
from someone, so you don't, acknowledge, you don't speak. A lot of people can assert themselves. They can speak passionately about what they want, what they need, but it's always like a threatening, defensive thing. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's not if it's not a cordial thing, then they just raise up instead of just talking about exactly what they think, how they feel, working through the emotions specifically of that. Like, you did this. This is how I felt about what you did. This is what I thought about what you did. This is what I wanted to do. I weighed my options. I felt like this about my options. This is what I chose to do. This is the decision or the consequence you're going to face because of whatever you've done to me. And this is what I want you to understand, acknowledge, but maybe we could come to common ground and overcome this. And that never happens. A lot of
Right.
people can't hold themselves accountable for the ugly shit they do because
Right.
like it's just it's not transparent. You know what I mean? They can't see themselves in that light. But yeah, you did have that premeditated thought. Yeah, it was against my well-being, and you did think of me often. You probably thought of me while you were doing it and afterwards. And as it affected me, or you invited me into this burning house that I didn't know was burning the fuck down. Now I've given you my energy, and you've basically blamed me for the house burning down, and I didn't, like, now it's all my fault. And if I wasn't aware of what was going on, I'm not aware of myself, I'm not aware of you, maybe I'll take that blame. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you transferring your energy, and you feel great.
So basically,
So
what I'm getting what you're saying to me is pretty much that we're not trained to actually deal with our emotions. We're not trained to actually be fully
no,
realized people.
no, young boys, especially young boys, young girls. I believe in the black community. It just goes down a line of just saying, just subtle things that condition us in a very callous way, where we become very stoic about how we feel and expressing ourselves.
Right.
As a child, you speak up, and your parents, like, you're a kid, you're not entitled to having feelings about
Yes.
things. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You can't be hurt, you can't have an opinion, you can't have a complete thought, and you cannot express that to me in a convincing way. Like, you just don't have the status to do so. So initially, that's it. Then, when it comes to being a man, just my perspective, when it comes to being a man, and when it comes to also being a woman, just from what I've seen, you know what I mean? Just what's been imposed on us, having to accomplish these things, which are a part of the American dream, but having parents who don't have the experience.
Okay, Jawan, go for it.
Yes. Where was I?
Okay, I was like, you over here dropping jewels and shit. Like,
I got you. I'm about to pick it back up. So, what I was saying was that we have parents who weren't experienced to give us the skills to cultivate a business, to cultivate ownership, and ownership in real estate, ownership in finance, also the different things that are imposed on us as children.
right.
Sometimes they tell us as boys, stop acting like a girl because you're expressing yourself emotionally, because you're hurt, because you're sad, because you're angry, and you don't know how to deal with your emotions. So when you're told to not react, although you were in a stressful emotional state as a child, in a stressful emotional environment where everybody else is stressed and there's violence going on, and you can't acknowledge the sensitive nature of it. You become desensitized, you become stoic, you become detached, emotionally detached.
Right.
And it's hard, especially as a young adult, coming into this thinking that you're strong, you can confident, and you're confident, you can conquer
Right.
because you've been prepared. And ultimately, what is out here, you're completely unprepared for it. You're not even prepared to deal with your emotions and acknowledge the, ill things about yourself while being progressive still. Like it's a very depressive, post-traumatic um, experience that a lot of young, older, or just people living in the inner city demographic, or just impoverished people in general. I don't even want to just quote unquote put this on, people of Semitic descent. I want to
Right.
make sure that everybody, because I know Polish, Italian, Cambodian,
Right. It's like a cultural thing.
Puerto Rican, Mexican. As long as you're in the inner city and you're above this migration line or this property line, then most likely you're going to be subjected to this and that and this and that.
Right. But I actually have a question for Shantara, a very specific question. You are a black woman, and so your experience will be is wholly different from mine and Jawan's.
Yeah.
And like we've discussed last week when we talked about interracial dating, the big thing against black women is this idea that they're too loud, they're too abrasive, they're too strong, they're too independent. And and so it's led to me what I've said before. That like Malcolm X said, a black woman is the most disrespected person on the face of this planet. As a black woman, how do you tie into this situation? I'm sorry.
I,
No, you say
I
more.
think ultimately vulnerability is an issue in our community in general. I feel like I'm pretty good at being not, and I don't think being vulnerable is a bad thing. I actually think that it's a good thing, and it can save you from becoming depressed, and it can save you from holding on to all of those things that Jawan was speaking about earlier. Like, if you are vulnerable and you're actually able to express the way that you feel to someone who is supposed to actually care,
Right.
I think that we have to be able to express ourselves. Holding it in is not. That's probably. I think that holding things in is, I think, the cause of a whole lot of other issues outside of just like mental issues. I think that it can also lead to like health issues physically.
Right. Well, it's actually.
So I think.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was actually talking to my sister Sabrina, and we're talking about cancer in particular and heart disease, and she's outlined time and time again that a lot of these things that we feel, in that respect, are influenced by our mindsets. And so, like, I think what you said touched on something that was very, very important to me, which goes into the overall black health thing. We all carry a lot, like you both have alluded to, all this baggage. And I feel like this baggage mentally manifests itself into physical demonstrations of ill health.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you touched on that. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but go ahead and continue.
No, that was basically the gist of it. I think that we all need to be able to be more vulnerable with each other